Hey everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff. This is the 5th time I have sat down to record this video. The first, 3 times just had some technical issues and things just weren't going as planned. The 4th time I got as far as editing the entire video together, uploading it to YouTube, and then watching it, because that's part of the process. You know, we got to watch what you upload to make sure it all transferred to YouTube correctly. And realizing that it was an incohesive, rambling pile of mush that was honestly quite painful to sit through. So, we're going to sit down and we're going to redo this. I'm scratching that video because this is a topic that I think is very interesting. As you guys have probably put together from the title, this is kind of a response to a video Nick Shabazz did a while back. Titled Excellence is a Minimum Bar. If you have not seen that video, definitely go check it out. It's a fantastic video, like most of Nick Shabazz's stuff is, and I definitely think it's very thought-provoking. I know for me, while I was watching that video, I was listening to it while I was working on something, I found myself just kind of nodding along like, yeah, that's it. He's right. That's something that I've been feeling too. And there has been something for the last few months that I've been feeling in regards to the knife community, the knife world, where I kind of feel like something's a little bit off. But I couldn't really wrap my mind around it. I couldn't just put a finger on it. And then Nick Shabazz's video came out, and I was like, yeah, there it is. He put it into words. I couldn't, but he finally helped me realize what the issue I've been having is. And so I want to talk about it a little bit. Before we get into that, I'm going to sum up Nick's video very briefly. Again, I highly recommend you go and watch it. I'm sure most of you have already seen it. But the point he was making was that the knife world, the EDC game, has gotten to a point where knives are very, very good. Things that are coming out from from companies these days, things that are being released, are very good. We have knives now that are excellent. And because we have such excellent knives available at all price points, there's really no excuse for a knife to be anything but excellent. And I really, really agree. A couple months ago, a friend of mine asked me for a knife recommendation, which happens in my real life a lot more than I kind of anticipated. You know, once people found out that this is kind of my hobby, they asked me things like this. And he asked me, he said, what's the best pocket knife? And of course, my first reaction, the first thing I did was give him the whole talk about, oh, well, you know, that's a hard question to answer because it's the wrong question to ask, right? You know, there's no one best pocket knife. It depends on what you're going to be using it for. It depends on what your preferences are. It depends on hand size, all these different things. That's kind of a bad question to ask. So we had a little bit of a talk and, you know, found out what he was looking for, got him something recommended. But after that, I started thinking, you know, it's very likely that the perfect knife for someone has already been made. And I started looking through my collection and stuff, and I've started realizing over the past couple of months that the knives I actually use and carry, you know, are kind of contained in a little group. And everything else I have just because it's cool and it interests me, which is completely fine and valid, right? I'm always going to have knives that I own just because I think they're cool. Excuse me. There's nothing wrong with that. But the perfect pocket knife for me has probably been made. As a knife enthusiast and collector, you know, we try a lot of things. And it was always just kind of in my mind that, yeah, there's a lot of knives that are good, but none of them are exactly perfect. But I'm starting to think that there's a high likelihood that the perfect knife is out there. And there's a couple of examples of this. A lot of you will have probably seen my video recently on how I fell in love with the Spyderco PM2 again. This is a knife that absolutely is in the running for the perfect pocket knife for me. It checks a lot of boxes. It's very purpose-built, and it works very well for a lot of things that I do in my day-to-day life. In the video I made about this, I talked about my experiences doing field work as a geologist and how the design of the PM2 makes it the perfect pocket knife to have with you out in the middle of nowhere for, weeks at a time. And that really, really got me thinking about a lot of this. And as I was having those thoughts about the PM2 was when I first heard Shabazz's video. Another knife that I find myself carrying a lot is a CGRB Pyrite. Either this version or the drop point. I kind of switch it up. I haven't decided which one I like better yet. But this is a knife that when I'm at school or just going about my day-to-day life, this kind of checks all the boxes. This is a knife that is very well made and well put together. A great design that works for my everyday needs. And so I carry it a lot. That's also a fairly new knife. And I've been looking at a lot of the things that are coming out nowadays and kind of scratching my head. We live in such a... I made this comment in the other video. I'm going to make it again. What a pretentious thing to say. What a weird thing to say. This is something I say it a lot of times. Other YouTubers say, we live in a time in the knife community. We live in an age of, this is the era of, how strange. No one cares outside of us. No one cares outside of knife community people, right? This is just a hobby, a small hobby about bladed objects. And we talk sometimes with such importance and such confidence in the language we use when none of this is going down in the history books. No one outside of just the few of us care about this. But anyways, we live in a time in the knife world where excellence is everywhere, right? Good knives are everywhere. There's a lot of good knives. Companies have really nailed fit and finish. We've got great minds designing fantastic pocket knives. We have execution of those designs that's absolutely phenomenal. And because of that, we're entering a time where things are very, very competitive, but it doesn't really feel like, or things should be competitive, but it doesn't really feel like they are. We have just an oversaturation of designs flooding the market. Some of the knives here on the table are some knives that are new to me this year. Artisan Cutlery Sea Snake's been out for a while. The Sencut Serene is new for this year. The Towser K's been out for a while, but it's new to me. This is the CGRB XL Feldspar, and then of course the Spyderco PM2, everyone knows and loves. These are, these ones here are new to me this year. And as I've been carrying and using them, they each have their own kind of unique flavors and styles. But they've been giving me an opportunity to reflect on the current state of affairs in the knife world. I kind of gave a rant about this topic in a video you'll be seeing next week, the review of the Kizer Towser K. And I don't want to rehash that rant here, but I want to touch on it a little bit. The Kizer Towser K is a knife that was hyped up a lot. This was a knife that when it was released, I knew I wanted to get one, but, didn't have enough money at the time. Then the one I wanted, the blue scaled version, was sold out forever, and then they came out with this one. I was like, oh, that's the one I want. Didn't really have money for it. Saw it on sale. Decided to pick it up. I had very high expectations for this knife. And again, without getting too far into the rant, this is a knife that kind of let me down. And it comes down to this. When I squeeze a knife, I depress the lock. The lock bar has like zero tension. Absolutely zero tension. I've had issues with that from Kizer in the past, like lock bar things. But the thing is I feel like this is a knife that shouldn't have been released. Like, that's a big problem to me. That's a big problem. And that should have been fixed, right? This knife should not have been released. It needed to be QC'd, but it was released because it got so popular. The Sencut Serene. I have been absolutely loving this knife. Very plain looking design, but hey, cliches become cliche for a reason. This is a very functional design. This knife is absolutely fantastic. And this is under $50. This knife is less than $50. And so when you have a knife like this that's executed to such perfection for less than $50, it kind of makes it hard for me to look at any other button lock that's more expensive, right? Okay, this same knife with a different steel, like upgraded steel, maybe titanium instead of aluminum, great. Yeah, that'd be a little bit more. But they would have to go above and beyond this level of build quality for me to kind of take it seriously, for it to justify its existence. And I know that sounds harsh, but that's kind of where I'm at with a lot of these things. Why would I go and spend $350 on a button lock when, this one does everything that I need it to? If I am going to spend a lot of money on a different knife, it's got to do something different. It's got to be truly amazing. A lot of knives are getting released these days, and this is something that's kind of been the crux of my issue, is that there is so much coming out. There is so much coming out. We have new designs being dropped from all companies every week, and it gets overwhelming. I'll sit and I'll look through the new arrivals pages on some of my favorite retailers, Blade HQ, Knife Center, Amazon. I browse Amazon a lot. And there's just all kinds of new stuff. And honestly, a lot of it just falls flat for me. A lot of it, I look at it and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sure that's a well-made knife, but why does that exist? Right? We already have that. And this can be because of similarities in design, because honestly, a lot of things look familiar. Recently, the Kaiser Brat was released, which is a G10 integral button lock, which is very cool. I do appreciate that. That's a new element. That's something we haven't really seen before. So that kind of justifies its existence. But the design itself, to me, looks identical, or nearly so, to the Kaiser Cozy or the Kaiser Assassin. So I'm wondering, why didn't they just make the Kaiser Integral Assassin, right, instead of a whole new design? That's a rant we've had before. But all this stuff comes out and it just floods the market, and I start to get a sense of quantity over quality, right? And yeah, build quality is good and stuff. I know that, okay, if I pick up this new knife, it's probably built fairly well at least. But does it really need to exist? What's it bringing that's new? And a lot of this kind of reminds me of the Star Wars sequel trilogy. I'm a huge Star Wars nut. And like lots of Star Wars nuts, I think the sequel trilogy was dog shit. Oh, it wasn't good. It had a lot of potential, but at the end of the day, it wasn't really. The sequel trilogy was not good. However, it looked amazing, right? Billions and billions of dollars were dumped into the sequel movies, and the cinematography was on point, the lighting was on point, CGI looked great, the movies looked expensive, and they looked vibrant, except for Exegol. Exegol was literally the laziest set I've ever seen. But anyways, good-looking movies generally, right? Good-looking movies, great actors, great talent in those movies. But under all of that, there was no soul. There was no soul. And I got, after the Rise of Skywalker, I kind of found myself thinking, why? Why were these movies made? What did they add to anything? Right? And the answer is nothing. And they weren't made because someone was passionate about creating a story. Someone wasn't passionate about telling the story, about giving a good story. Disney wanted money, and Star Wars looked like a great cash grab, right? And I'm seeing that a lot in the knife community. We have so much stuff being released that's like, okay, yeah, that looks good. That might be a functional tool, or it might be it's a thing that exists, right? But why? Why? It was just made to be sold, And we see this with all of Hollywood nowadays. I'm not going to go into deep film critic-y stuff here, but I remember when I first got into Marvel, back when I was young, much younger, a child. When a Marvel movie came out, it felt like a big deal. It felt like an event because, generally the Marvel movies were very good. They were entertaining, and you kind of had to wait a little bit between productions. And then, and this was with everything, once a movie left theaters, you had to wait months for it to come out on DVD. Nowadays, we have all these streaming services, and we have so much content being flooded at us. Think of all the Marvel TV shows, even Star Wars. Gosh sakes. The Mandalorian was amazing, but Season 3 made me want to rip my eyes out and eat them. But think about all the Marvel stuff. I just finished watching Secret Invasion. I was way behind. I wasn't really interested in it, but I decided, I was going to watch it after work a couple of nights. And it was trash. It was trash. Following She-Hulk. And honestly, I feel like a lot of the Marvel shows, even the ones that had a lot of potential, like Moon Knight, kind of fumbled, towards the ending especially. But I think we're seeing, they have the means to make all this stuff, so they are making it. They're just flooding the market. They've got to make money. They've got to keep their audiences satisfied. And what they're ending up with is poor production quality, poor stories, and products that no one really cares about, right? Which is sad. It's very, very sad. And again, I think that is completely 100% what's going on in the production knife world, right? Things are just being released. Gosh, it's at such a breakneck pace too. And a lot of it really makes me question, why? Why did you do this? Again, we're going to talk a little bit more about similarities, but the Civivi Conspirator, and here's the Civivi Voltaic. These knives definitely have some similarities. They're not completely identical, but there's a lot of knives within Civivi and Wii's lineup, and Sencut too, that they all just kind of look like just subtle tweaks on the same design. It's like, could you not think of something else? Right? Could you not think of something else? But no, they just need to keep releasing this stuff. Something I hear a lot is, we have this cool knife out. Oh, this knife is so cool, this, that, and the other. And honestly, cool doesn't cut it anymore. As a lot of you know, I'm a geologist, and I think about... I like to draw comparisons between things, as you guys have probably realized. And one thing that I draw a comparison between the knife community and my geology work is quality of sampling, right? So here's a rock I found the other day. We were out working cows, and I was looking around in an arroyo, as I do, and I picked this up, and it was really cool to me. This is mostly quartz and feldspar, but these little red nodules are garnets. I was like, oh, this is really cool. Garnet's my birthstone. I was like, interesting. I'll pick that up and put it in my put it in my collection, which is what I've done. However, if I was out doing a geologic survey, if I was out working on a research paper or something, and I just picked this rock up, I couldn't do anything with this. Right? This is not a good sample because, number one, it's in an arroyo. I have no idea where the heck this eroded out of. I would probably never be able to identify what bedrock this eroded from because it might have traveled hundreds and hundreds of miles to the point where I picked it up. Right? So it's out of context. Right away, it's out of context. I don't know what rock formation this came from or anything. If I were to take this to the lab and try and do some analyses on it, the information I got out of it would not really be useful because, again, I don't really know anything about this rock. Now, just picking it up and saying, oh, that's neat, and throwing it in my, collection of other rocks, yeah, that's fine, right? That's fine. It's cool. It is cool to me. But is it useful? No. And this is something that we're taught as geologists, is how to sample correctly. You can't just walk outside and pick up a cool-looking rock off the ground and write your dissertation on that. Because that rock has no meaning outside of it was just there on the ground. If you want to sample something, you have to go to the source. You have to go to a bedrock outcrop that, hasn't moved. And then even when you find that, you need to chip away until you find a nice, clean rock, that a surface that hasn't been exposed to the outside elements, hasn't been weathered or altered. And that is the sample you take, and that is the sample you can use to get some radiometric dates or get some chemical analyses or, grain size structure, anything you want to do with that rock. You have to source it correctly, because otherwise it just doesn't mean very much. And I think we see that a lot. We have a lot of cool designs that, a lot of things that look cool. We've got all this coolness coming out, but at the end of the day, it's like, but why? Like, what is this doing that's new? What is this doing? A lot of knives, I feel like, are built kind of without a purpose. And going back to my Star Wars analogy, let's look at these two knives here. The Spyderco PM2. This is kind of like the original trilogy, right? It was original when it came out, and whatever your feelings are on the Spyderco PM2, I don't think you can deny that this is a knife that really, really changed the knife world. And it was built for a reason. The people that designed and built this knife, they knew what they were doing. They knew what they wanted. Kind of like the original Star Wars movies, that there was a story that needed to be told, and, pushing the boundaries of cinematography, pushing the boundaries of CGI, things like that. And then this knife, the CGRB XL Feldspar, it's kind of like the sequels. It looks beautiful. We got fat carbon, M390 milled titanium. Ooh. But it's just trying to cash in on my nostalgia for the original Feldspar, which was an amazing knife that I loved. And this knife, honestly, has some issues that I'm not very happy with. This knife, I don't think, is an amazing knife. I'm a sucker for the Feldspar, so I do like it somewhat. Again, we'll get more into that with the review, but I cannot deny that this does just kind of feel like, hey, people like the Feldspar, here's this. I feel like some corners were cut, and and again, this is a dealer exclusive, so maybe that's part of the issue, but that's kind of how I feel. Cool idea, but in the execution, you start to realize, did I really need this? Did the community really need this? Why is this? And again, that's not to say that there aren't still amazing things being made. The Arson Cutlery Sea Snake, I love this knife. I've been using the heck out of this knife. This thing has not left my side since I got it. I did dye the scales. I love that knife. It's a fantastic knife. It feels like it has a purpose. It feels like it justifies its existence, right? I watch a lot of YouTubers. I know some content creators don't like to watch other content creators. I do, right? I do. And one of the reasons is because they handle more things than I will ever handle. And they handle a lot of things that, I know I'm not going to try. And so I'm happy to just hear what they think. But something that even I get burned out on is just how much new stuff is being released to these guys for them to take a look at. And that's fine, right? That's fine. But I hear the same things over and over again. Good action, comfortable ergos, blah, 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 14C, 28N, micarta, blah, 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 M390, titanium, blah, blah, blah. And it all just kind of becomes a blur at some point. And it's very seldom that anything sticks out to me nowadays, and I see it, and I'm like, oh, that's something I need. That's something I'm very interested in. A lot of knives, I can watch them handle it and immediately know in my mind exactly what it feels like and exactly what it's all about. And I have already 6 knives in my collection that do the exact same thing. One knife that was released recently is the Petrified Fish Loco. Actually, it was released a while ago, but anyways, I saw it recently. And it kind of sums this up really, really well. Great looking knife, very good price. I'm sure the action's incredible. Petrified Fish has a good record for that. The action's incredible. I can tell it'd be very functional. It's a good shape. I have absolutely no interest in ever handling or reviewing that knife. Why? Because I've already got 5 or 6 knives in my collection that do the exact same things, that are the exact same knife for all intents and purposes. And I can look at that knife and already know exactly what it's all about, how it'll function, how it'll feel in my hand. And so why would I bother reviewing it, right? Why? For a knife to stand out nowadays, it needs to be truly excellent. It needs to be built well, and it needs to have a unique design. It needs to have a design that stands out from the crowd. We mentioned action just a little bit ago. Something that I've been thinking about recently is I do not remember the last time I handled a knife and I thought, this is bad action. Well, actually, there's been a couple of like my cheap knife week things that haven't been very good, but like it's been a while since I've handled a knife and been like, wow, this is terrible action, because companies have figured out how to make a good action, right? And so action that used to be like, oh my goodness, breathtaking, like, oh, this is like the pinnacle of quality, this is absolutely excellent. Nowadays, it's just like, yeah, it has a good action because obviously it does, right? Everything has a good action. And so having a good action really is not that special anymore, right? It's not that noticeable. A bad action, however, is even more noticeable. This knife, the action has broken in. If you've seen the unboxing, you know that the action was not great. This thing still doesn't have a fantastic action, but it's not a bad action. However, because it's not amazing, it feels bad. And I think that's a theme everywhere. If your knife is not excellent, it is bad. It is bad. There are so many knives recently that if I reviewed this knife or this knife at the beginning of my channel almost 3 years ago, I would be like, this is a good design and it has that one quirk, just be careful with the lock bar. That is really, really annoying. I hate that. I'll be like, oh wow, and it disengaged that time. But, just be careful with the lock bar, but, other than that, it's a great knife. With this one, I'd be like, yeah, it's a fantastic knife. The action's not that great, but, otherwise it's a great knife. In 2023, that seems kind of unacceptable, right? Things that I would have let slide, and again, like, I'm not a big-time reviewer. I'm small fry, but, things I would have let slide a while back, I can't really do that anymore, right? I can't really do that anymore. And so now I've been looking for knives because I know that most things are going to be built fairly well. We've got companies like Riot that are doing amazing work. I know that most things are going to be built fairly well. And when things aren't, it really does stand out. But, again, you could argue that's the minority. Fine. Most things are built very, very well. But they all do the exact same thing. And so nowadays I found myself, if I'm going to be getting a knife, because again, I'm a small channel. Companies don't send me things very often. What I review, I either have to buy myself, or it's loaned in by you guys, or it's given to me by someone. I am technically part of a pass-around group, but I have been so busy with life the last couple of months that I haven't even put myself on there to have anything sent my way, because I know I won't have time to look at it and get it moved along in the time frame that the pass-around group requires. But, anyways, if I'm going to buy something, I want to buy something that is good. I want to buy something that will either find a place in my collection, I can give away to someone and feel good about it, or I can sell it, trade it, whatever, right? And so I'm very picky. I'm very judicial about the knives that I show on the channel. And I've gotten to the point where now I'm just looking for things that are different. This is the Civivi Platheros. This is an older knife, another one that I did a dye job on. This is a really cool knife that justifies its existence because it just looks goofy, right? This is an Elijah Isham design. Is it the most practical EDC knife? No, absolutely not. But I like it because it's different. It's very different and it stands out. And to me, that matters. I am going to give Civivi credit. This year they have been doing some things that I've been pleased with. They've been taking risks and releasing designs that are different and fun, such as this behemoth, which I absolutely love. This is cool. I love seeing things like this because this is different, right? This is breaking the mold. And breaking the mold is a sense of excellence, right? So I really appreciate that. Got to give Civivi credit where credit is due, because in the past few years I've been pretty negative about their lack of originality. But, they're releasing some new things, and that's something worthy of being praised. So, to wrap this video up, is excellence truly the minimum bar? I think so. If your knife is not excellent, if it's not doing something new, if it's not bringing something new to the table, it's very hard to recommend it. It's very hard to seek it out, right? It's very hard to feel like it's justified in existing. And again, that sounds so rude. And this is something Nick Shabazz brought up too. it's hard to, especially with like smaller makers and designers, like, it's mean to say, your knife doesn't do anything new, right? What does this bring to the table? Because everyone thinks their stuff is special, and they should, right? They should. And if I were to ever design a knife, I don't think it's special. It might not be, but I would think it would be. And that's a hard thing to say, right? You want to be nice. Something that happens quite often at the geology department is people will come in with these rocks they found and they want identified. They think they've got a meteorite, they think they've got a dinosaur bone, they think they've got gold, and they want us to tell them what it's worth, what they've got that and how much it's worth. And 9 times out of 10, it's nothing, right? And a lot of geologists hate dealing with this. In our little department, when people like this come in, I'm typically the one that gets sent to deal with them because I have no qualms whatsoever about telling someone, yeah, this is absolutely nothing. That might say more about me as a person than anything else, but one time we had a gentleman come in and literally dump a bag of roadside gravel on a table and say, help me sift through this and see if I find anything good. And I told this guy, you're not going to find anything good. There's nothing here. Well, I spent, so long gathering up all this gravel and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay. So I kind of went through it with him a little bit. I was like, well, here's a brachiopod fossil. That's cool. How much is it worth? Nothing. It's neat. And, he got a little bit upset and stuff. But I had to tell him, look, just because you can pick up these rocks doesn't mean they're good. And that kind of goes back to what we're talking about with sampling. Another thing, though, is overhyping things. And I felt this with the Kaiser Towser K. This knife was hyped up to me a lot, and I'm pretty disappointed with it. Because I feel like, new things get released, and they need to be promoted. And so you hear, this, that, and the other. I also work for a natural history museum, right? It's part of my geology stuff. And as part of that job, we often go to rock and mineral shows. And we set up a booth, we're education only, and stuff. So we sit there and, we talk about geology and paleontology and things like that. And we also, as a museum, we're looking for new things to add to our collection, new displays that we can make, things like this. And so we'll have people come up to us often and say, oh, I know someone who has this. And they'll hype it up. Oh, it's just the most beautiful piece of petrified wood you've ever seen. It came from so and so, blah, 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 blah. We'll hook you up. It's like, yeah, absolutely. We'd love to talk to them, see what they've got, And then you go and you show up, and it's a very average piece of pre-degraded petrified wood. And it's like, oh. I'm like, well, I'll sell it to you for $600. It's like, well, no, sir, we're not buying that. That's not good. And people get defensive often, blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, it's not good, right? It's not good. Maybe you could sell it to your nephew for $25. I mean, that'd probably be an okay trade, but $600? No, we're not taking that. And again, I feel, again, with the knife community, I feel like there's a lot of things where it's like, oh, we have this knife and we're selling it for this much because this is a design by so-and-so and we think it's worth so much. It's like, but no. Have you looked at the competition? Have you looked at the other things around? Just putting someone's name on something or saying that, oh, it's this, doesn't bring a huge monetary increase. And again, that's kind of hard, especially if it's someone who's just kind of getting started designing knives. You don't want to say, yeah, this is the most boring thing I've ever seen. This is a Benchmade bug out by a different name, because that's mean. And I don't think anyone should say that, right? I want to say this in this video, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm not trying to be a downer. I'm not trying to ruin anyone's dreams or enjoyments of this hobby, because I still enjoy this hobby a lot, and I think you all should too, and there's a lot of beautiful things going on. Again, good stuff is still coming out. I'm just pointing out some things that I've been noticing, right? And, there are still gems coming out, to use some Shabazz-ology. And I like watching other reviewers who handle literally everything that's released by a company, because, you know, they handle all this stuff and I can kind of watch and be like, you know, that's more of the same, more of the same. Ooh, that's a little bit different. And then I can find, you know, I can be like, okay, well, I'm going to seek that out for myself, you know, and then put that on the channel. But yeah, I think this video has been long enough. I've got a couple more notes here. I don't think we're going to touch on anything though. I'm just going to kind of sum it up like this. Good knives are out there. And again, I do think that it's very possible that the perfect knife for someone has been made. However, we're enthusiasts, right? We're collectors. Even if we have a pocket knife that does everything that we need a pocket knife to do, we want to collect things. And if these companies are going to want to keep up with that and, you know, keep our interest, geez, what a pretentious thing to say. You know, if they want to keep up with that, they want to keep us interested, they're going to have to start releasing things that are good. You know, innovation goes a long way. You know, and some innovation is such as, you know, with this Dimco Free Rein, this new sheath that doesn't dull your blade as it comes in and out. That's cool. That's innovation. I love seeing someone look at a problem and say, hey, I'm going to fix that. And, you know, I like that. You know, that to me, that's cool. If you're just releasing more and more and more D or 14C28 in micarta drop point folding knives, look, I've already got 3 of those. I don't need any more, and I don't think anyone else does either. Again, wow, how mean. But those are my thoughts. Excellence is truly the minimum bar. We have reached a point where companies they have their build quality nailed. We have great designs out there already, and we've got a world where you can get excellence at a low price. So if you're going to be releasing a knife at any category, it doesn't matter if it's budget, high-end, whatever, it needs to be good. It needs to be different. It needs to justify its existence. It needs to say, hey, I'm new, I'm cool, I'm something truly special, and I exist. So that's going to be it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave it a like, comment below, subscribe. Let me know if you got this far into the video. I'd be curious to hear. But I've been Gideon, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next one. Adios.